Good morning. Blessed curses. Is there such a thing? How do we view blessings? How do we view curses? One day, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai sent his son, Rabbi Elazar, Gemara tells us in Mayit Kotan, to go get a blessing from several of the sages of the time. Rabbi Yena's son, Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Yehuda ben Gedim. Go and get a blessing from them. So he travels, he meets them, and they started to curse him. Here's what they said. Yehi ratzon, may it be his will, that you should plant and not harvest. You should bring in, but not bring out. Okay? Which is a very negative curse. You should let out and not bring in. And these are terms which are the exact opposite of what you would want. They're harsh curses. And obviously, when Rabbi Elazar heard this, he was devastated. Comes back to his father, and he said, it's one thing not to get a blessing, but to get a curse, this is not what I bargained for. They cursed me. So his father said, no, you don't understand. All these were really brachas. These were all blessings. What were the blessings? He started to explain to him. When they said you should plant and not harvest, what they mean is that you should have children and they shouldn't pass away during your lifetime. So you'll plant, but you're not going to harvest in that sense. Okay, I hear you. The next curse was you should bring in and not bring out. What they meant was you should bring in daughters-in-law for your sons. You should marry them off. But they shouldn't pass away. They shouldn't return back to their father's house, and nothing should happen with them. And when they said you should take out and not bring in, they meant your own daughters. You should marry off your daughters. Other men will take them in, so to speak. Their husbands will take them into their families, to their houses. And you shouldn't bring them back, right? You should let out but not bring back in, which means the daughter shouldn't return home and say, I'm coming back to live at home, God forbid, of what that represents. So the concept is that really Rabbi Elazar thought he heard curses, and they were harsh things. His father, the author of the Zohar, has to come and explain to him these weren't curses. These were great sages giving you tremendous blessings. The Maharsha, the great commentator, says, if you want to give a blessing straight. Why do you have to make it sound like it's a curse and talk in riddles and cause him to feel so bad? You want to give a blessing, tell him. You should have children and you shouldn't bury them. You should have, you make weddings for your sons and it should last. You make weddings for your daughters and it should last. What's this idea of talking backwards and saying really a curse and expecting them to understand what it's referring to? Our parsha is somewhat of a difficult parsha, the Chukaysai, in the sense that we have here, unfortunately, many curses. Torah talks about the fact that if a person is not going to follow in the ways of Torah, we're not going to listen, and we're not talking about people who don't know better. We're not talking about people who haven't been afforded the proper Jewish upbringing as far as education goes and values. People who have decided on their own to stray from the path of Torah. People that have been following this way and so on. And Torah tells us, if someone does not follow, there's a whole list of curses. We have 49 days of Sephirah. We count and we refine ourselves. Between Pesach and Shavuos, we have 49 curses in this week's parsha, unfortunately. And it's very harsh. It's so harsh that usually you get called up for your aliyah to the Torah. And the shul, when you are called to the Torah to make a blessing, which, by the way, what it does is for us is it also elevates the person spiritually. That's why the Shabbos before a wedding, the chassan gets an aliyah. The Shabbos before your birthday, you should be called to the Torah. If someone, heaven forbid, is observing a yard site, they get an aliyah the Shabbos before, because it elevates the person. It does something special. And he gets called to the Torah. He holds the handles of the Torah, the Eitz Chaim, and it makes a blessing. This week, when you read the Torah, nobody gets called to the Torah. Nobody wants to have that section, right? You're going to call Mr. So-and-so up for that. What's done is the one reading the Torah, the Baal Korah, he just says the blessings himself and does it. You don't have the calling up of somebody. No, it's not in Russia. It's well, as we'll soon see. But the idea here is that you don't get called up; you do it on your own. These blessings, they're tough. They're difficult blessings. They're curses. They're difficult curses. But there's a story. The Alter Rebbe was the reader of the Torah in his shul, and every Shabbos he would read the Torah. By the way, he would stand on the opposite side. The way we do it now, the Balkera stands on the left, and the one getting the Aliyah stands on the right. The Alter Rebbe would do it the other way around. He would stand on the right side, and the one getting the Aliyah would stand on the left. One year, it was Parshas Kisavai, not this Parsha, but the other Parsha when we read about the curses. His father was, the Alter Rebbe was out of town. So somebody else read the Torah instead of him. Fine Balkera. When he came to the curses, to the Klolis, his son, the Alter Rebbe's son, who later would become the second Rebbe of Chabad, the Mittel Rebbe, he fainted. He heard the curses and he fainted. They barely revived him, and he was so weak for weeks. For weeks, he couldn't get out of bed. So much so that when it came to Yom Kippur, the Alter Rebbe was debating, and he was unsure, will my son be able to fast on Yom Kippur because of his health condition? And Yom Kippur is a big one. You don't easily say, don't worry, you're not in the mood. So they asked the Mittel Rebbe, what's happening here? This is not the first time you heard the Parsha. You never fainted. All of a sudden this year you faint, and you're ill after, you're weak. So he explained to them that all the other years, my father, the Alter Rebbe, reads the blessings, the curses. And when my father reads the curses, I don't hear curses, I hear blessings. Okay? So what he was saying was, yes, the same words were said, but in those words, I heard blessings. I didn't hear curses. And this is what the Torah tells us, that really the Zohar tells us, that in Torah you have the hidden parts of Torah and the revealed parts of Torah. And certain things come in a very concealed form. The blessings that we have in this Parsha are concealed in curses. 49 verses of harsh stuff. But really that's only in the revealed sense. It looks like it's a curse. Hidden within these curses are really blessings. Why is that the case? So first of all, in Parshas Nitzavim it says that these curses are not for us, they're for the enemies. There's a certain caveat there, which hopefully we'll never see these curses, and that whatever was seen should never be seen again. But it's more than that. There's a concept that certain things are so deep that they have to come in a concealed form. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai sent his son Rabbi Lazar to receive blessings. He was receiving some of the tremendous energies possible. He was getting very deep blessings. And the only way that these blessings could be transmitted was through a curse. Sometimes a concept is so deep, it's so strong, it can't come in its raw form. It won't be transmitted. It has to come in a certain packaging. It has to come in a certain way. You have to figure out a way how to get those blessings there. It's like some grandmothers will call their grandchild, "Oh, you're so ugly." Well, they don't mean ugly. And they're not afraid of ayin hara or other evil eye or other things. It's just their way to express their deep feeling. They say beautiful, it doesn't express it, what they're feeling. You're so cute doesn't express it for them. They have such a deep love. They want to bring it out in such a way. They can't use the straightforward form of talking. It doesn't do it for them. Sometimes you have it in expression. When you say something, it's because you can't bring it out in the typical way of speaking. Chassidus tells us the blessings that are in these curses, they're not just, you should know they're blessings, don't be scared. They're blessings of such a level, they can't come in the regular way of blessings. Now, we didn't hear the Alter Rebbe read the Torah. We don't know how these are blessings. We just understand that they are blessings. And the Mittel Rebbe who heard it really heard what's being said. But I want to share one of these verses which talks about a curse and see how Chassidus tells us it's really a blessing. Let's look. The pasuk says, regarding that there'll be such a lack of bread. It's pasuk Chavav, verse 26. Says like this: B'shivri lachamati lechem v'afu es nashim nachmchem b'sanur echad v'yeshivu lachemchem b'mishkol achatem v'leisis bo'u. It says like this: I will cut your source of food. Due to a shortage of wood, 10 women will bake bread in one oven. The bread will crumble in the oven, and they'll bring back your bread as crumbs measured by weight, and you'll eat the bread and won't be satisfied. Let me tell you what this means in English. Okay. There's going to be a shortage. There won't be enough food to eat. There won't be enough wood, proper wood, to burn these ovens. And the little bit of bread that's going to be, we're going to have to, 10 women are going to have to bake together the bread for their families. And it's going to crumble. And they're going to have to divide it by weight, not by pieces. And everyone's going to get a small piece. And that small piece is not going to be enough to satiate them. It's a horrible curse. It's hunger of the deepest levels. Now, how does Chassidus understand this? So Chassidus explains like this. First of all, we have to understand that when you talk about bread refers to Torah. Torah and mitzvahs. Torah is food, nourishment, and mitzvahs general are like an aroma, a smell. The reason why we have that distinction is because when you learn Torah, you take it inside of you. You understand it. It's a concept. It's an idea. You connect with it. It starts to become the way you think. It's not a passing idea. Because you understand it, you become connected to it. It becomes part of you. That's the idea of learning. Mitzvahs, although it's a connection between us and Hashem, it's something which we do. It doesn't necessarily become part of us the way an intellectual idea does. So in Kabbalah, learning is compared to food, and mitzvahs are compared to smell, to an aroma. So the moment you say lechem, the moment you say bread in Torah, it's an allusion to bread, to Torah, to learning. Okay, so what we're implying here, something to do with learning Torah. We also have a pasuk in Tehillim, v'seirascha b'seich me'oi, your Torah is in my insides, which is the idea that Torah comes inside of us. Okay, Shlomo HaMelech also, King Solomon has certain psukim in Mishlei, which talk about this idea of bread, Hashem's bread and our bread. It's the idea of learning. So we're going to be baking bread represents the idea that we're going to be working on our Torah. Now there's a remes. Chita, wheat, is a gematria. It's a numerical equation. Ches is 8, Tes is 9, and Hey of Chita is 5. 8, 9, and 5 is 22. How many letters do we have in the Aleph base? 22. So the idea of Chita represents the idea of the 22 letters, which is the idea that the bread of Chita, wheat bread, goes into our insides, which is through the 22 letters of the Torah. Okay. So what does it mean, shivri lechem? What does it mean when it says that the bread is going to crumble? Crumbling bread reminds us of the luches, the breaking of the tablets. What's the idea of breaking of tablets? Tablets, the luches, which Moshe Rabbeinu brought, the first set was broken. As a result, we got a second set. The second set of luches were greater than the first. With the second set of luches came the midrashim, many explanations, many parts of Torah which were not given initially with the first set. The first set was the Saras HaDibros, 10 Commandments. With the second set came many more things, and with it. So the concept, when Torah says you should know the bread's going to crumble, what he's implying to is that you're going to reach a level of learning and understanding which will be far greater than you have initially. So there's a simple meaning of the pasuk, which is a curse. It's terrible. But there's a deeper meaning, which implies a tremendous level of learning, of understanding, of progress in connecting with Torah to a great special level. Now, what's the idea of the bread not being baked? It's going to crumble, it's not going to bake, the wood's not going to be enough. What that means is, when you have raw bread, what happens when you eat raw bread is it doesn't satiate you, it doesn't go in, it just causes problems. When you have learning, we're saying it has to be in such a way that it should go inside of you. You should be able to process it. It should come in such a way that it gets baked. It's not enough to learn Torah, and whatever it's information that passes in, passes out, it's purely academic. It has to enter you in such a way that it becomes part of the way you think. It becomes absorbed within you. And the way that happens is through fire. Okay, you have to bake bread. If there's not enough wood, it's not going to bake properly. What does it mean through fire? A person has to learn and have a excitement, a passion. It has to be warm. Okay, the idea of warm represents that you're enthusiastic. You want it. You're into it. When you just do it in a cold way, which is very common, when something is an idea, a concept, you could remain very detached from it. Yeah, question?
I just comment. The Hukotah is reference to Hakika.
Yes. Very good. So the Hukaisa is the idea also of learning, because learning, the word, maybe we'll get to that shortly. But the idea is that you have different ways of learning. And when you learn, it has to be in such a fashion that there's an excitement, there's a passion involved in your learning. It doesn't remain just intellectual. Okay, but how do you get there? So the way to reach that level, that's the curse. 10 women are baking bread in the same oven. What it means is it's a blessing that you should learn with your 10 faculties of your soul. Okay, we speak many times about the concept that the neshama has 10, we'll call it subcategories or faculties, strengths, abilities, spheres, koiches. These 10 levels are 3 intellectual levels and 7 emotive levels. Learning Torah could be done in a way that you're detached from it. It's an intellectual idea, but it's not emotional. Or it's emotional, kind of, but it's not fully taking me on. The idea of 10 women baking means you're going to learn your Torah, which Torah is wheat, right? That's bread, because it's food, it takes inside of you. You're going to learn it, bake it, which is the idea of learning it with excitement, with passion, with a fire. And 10 represents the blessing that you're going to learn it with your entire being. You know, sometimes a person is half listening, you kind of understand it, but you're not into it. It's going to be you. You'll meet people that have a concept, a theory, a discovery. It's not an idea. They're alive. They have a passion for it. That's the way we have to learn Torah. It has to be in such a way that we really get it. Yes.
So that's why there has to be 10 women to represent each
of the 10 faculties.
The 3 and the 7.
That's the how we're understanding this curse of it'll be such a shortage of even wood to burn the fire that women are sharing one oven. It's the idea. The 10 is alluding to the fact that we're going to use all of our 10 faculties when it comes to our bread, which is our learning to try to absorb it, bring it in, and so on. There was a chassid by the name of Rabbi Shloimeh. He was living in communist Russia with very little access to books, to Torah books. He couldn't study. He once came to an old shul, and he went to the Geniza. Geniza is a place where you keep shemus, things that are holy books. You can't throw them out, but they get ripped, tattered beyond the usage. So you put them in this pile, so in a box. Later they bury it. So sometimes it's a piece of a chumash, maybe an old Talmud that has 2 pages from it, a Maimer Chassid. You know, it's all different. He gathered a couple papers together and he sat down and started to study. And he was studying with tremendous fervor. And he's into it and he's learning. Now, understand that if you start with 1 page, let's say page 6 of Chumash, and then your next page is 40 of some Talmud, it doesn't connect. Okay, it's very hard to learn this way. And he was sitting and learning really, really into it. That Mendel Futterfass saw him, and he went over to him and he said, Reb Shloimeh, how do you do this? How are you learning in such a way where 1 page doesn't connect to the other? Imagine you're reading a book, right? You turn the page and it's a different story, different subject, different genre. The whole thing is different. How do you get into it? So he explained to him, he said, listen, there's 2 ways of learning. There's the intellectual part, which I have to understand, and that tends to be difficult because 1 page is great and then the next page doesn't connect. But then there's my relationship with Hashem that I have through learning. I'm learning God's wisdom. And when you learn Hashem's Torah, you connect with Him on the deepest levels, right? Because your mind and you are the same. It's the closest thing to you that you have is your mind. Activity that you do, right? There's you and there's the activity, and you're connecting. But it's not becoming one with you. When you're done with the activity, that's not you anymore, right? But if you're learning and you're understanding something, that idea that you understood becomes part of the way you think now. It becomes part of you. You're changed in that way. Okay, it becomes you. So he told him, yes, there's the learning, but it's fragmented and it's difficult and it's frustrating. But that's the academic side of the Torah. Every page I learned something, but I know that I'm connecting with Hashem on this deep level. And this is our attitude towards learning Torah: to have a fire, to realize that bread, just like you absorb it, and if it's baked properly, it gets part of you into you, and it satiates you. So too, Torah is your source of life. It gives you sustenance, and you do it with all the faculties of your soul, and with a passion and a fire. Yes, question?
So it's one thing to read the Torah, but it's another thing to understand the meaning. To get it. That's where.
Yes.
That's where you're.
Meaning, what I'm talking about is to understand the content well, and it becomes part of you. Whether you know the secrets behind it, Torah is infinite in its layers, and there's so much of it. Yeah, exactly. So many different aspects to it. But let's go a little bit further. We know that everything in Torah has a special order. Nothing is random. Nothing is random at all in the world, but nothing is random, especially in Torah itself. And what's the next thing that comes after the curses? What's the next thing Torah talks about? Talks about something called erchin. Erchin is the idea that how much is a person worth? Okay, the value of something. A person comes to the temple and he says, I dedicate to give the value of one lamb to the temple. How much is a lamb worth? There's a value, and that's the amount of money he has to give. What if a person goes and he gives this, he makes a pledge to give the value of a certain person? Okay, the value of my son I want to give to something. Okay, there are people that did that. They would give the weight of a child to express their appreciation. They say the weight of my baby, I'm going to give that in gold to the temple. Or I'm going to donate. They say various things like that. But in our parsha, it's if I talk about giving erchin, the value of someone to Torah, right? The value of to the Beis Hamikdash, the value of something. What is that value? Okay, so depends if it's a man, if it's a woman, if it's a child, if it's a strong person, a weak person. It has to do with how much their market value is. It's hard for us to understand that today when there's no slaves, thank God, or at least not around here. Shouldn't be anywhere. But the idea is that every person has a value of how much they're worth if you have to put it into monetary terms. Just to as a side note, every person is priceless. But when it comes to this idea, there's a dollar amount. So why does Torah talk about this right after all the curses? Well, maybe because selling people is a curse. The Baal HaTurim says a beautiful explanation. He says the order of the erchin, the order of these values, go in the following way. First, talk about someone that's 50 shekel, 30 shekel, 20 shekel, 10 shekel, 5 shekel, 3 shekel, 15 shekel, and 10 shekel, which depends, various ages, genders, and so on. Okay. If you calculate all of these numbers together, you get, says the Baal HaTurim, 143. If you combine the curses of this parsha, which is 49, and the curses of Kisavai, together you have 143. Okay? Right. What's the connection between the curses and all these values of people? So there's a beautiful vart from the Kotzker Rebbe who explains as follows. I'll first share a story that will illustrate this much better. The Klausenberger Rebbe, Rabbi Yikosil Yehuda Halberstam, was in Auschwitz. And at some point, the Nazis, they gathered all the Jews from his town together, and they put this Rebbe in middle of a circle, and all the SS were around, and they started to ridicule him publicly. And one of the commanders took his gun, his rifle, whatever it was, and he whacked him over the head very hard. And he said, "Tell me, are you still the chosen people?" So he said, "Yes, we're the chosen people." They started to kick him and hurt him, and it was really, really brutal. The way he was beaten up and thrown to the ground multiple times. He barely survived. And they kept on saying, "Are you still the chosen people? Are you still the chosen people?" And he kept on saying, "Yes." At some point, he's on the ground, literally blood pouring from all parts of his body. And the commander screams out, "Are you still the chosen people?" And he said, "As long as we're not the ones hitting, kicking, and killing people, we are still the chosen people." Now, unfortunately, he lost his wife and 11 children in the camps. He went to Eretz Yisrael, he remarried and rebuilt a Hasidic dynasty, very large. The Kotzker Rebbe says like this, that why does Erchin, the value, come after the curses? To tell you like this, regardless of what a person may go through, and no one should ever go through these curses, and regardless what we go through historically as a nation, you have to retain your value as a person. You don't say, this happened to me, that happened to me, forget it. I'm losing all my morals. I'm losing my standards. I don't care. I'm just going to do, listen, that's the way they treat me. That's the way I'm going to treat them. Torah says, after all these curses, and it's the same number, 143, to tell you that what goes on in your life, even if you don't see those hidden blessings and you see it as curses and as challenges, people tend to lose sometimes their principles, their core values. They become not so nice. And they tend to say, listen, I'm crushed. Torah says, don't lose your values. The first thing we're telling you right after curses, and it's not by coincidence, is values, the worth of someone. Take a couple questions from those that are watching online. Hello, Dimitri. Hello, Joel. Okay, the people are the blessing because Amech Klom. Okay, very good. Yeah. It's true. We are the blessing. But we're talking about the fact that we don't lose our value in the sense that we understand what we're here for and our purpose. And even if things don't go exactly our way, we have to stand up, stand proud, and stand strong. Thank you very much for joining. Join us again tomorrow. We have a few more minutes. We'll do some more learning.
Tomorrow. Good for them. Same time live.